This is a mitochondrion, often referred to as the powerhouse of the cell due to its function of releasing energy. Within the mitochondrion, glucose and oxygen undergo cellular respiration, a vital process that releases energy necessary for various cellular functions. However, for glucose and oxygen to fulfill their roles in cellular respiration, they must first pass through the cell membrane. On the other hand, the waste products of cellular respiration, such as carbon dioxide, pose a threat to the cell if allowed to accumulate. Excessive carbon dioxide can disrupt vital chemical reactions and even poison the cell. Therefore, efficient mechanisms are required to expel these waste products. Simultaneously, other cellular processes demand the controlled passage of substances into and out of the cell. In this video, we'll explore how diffusion, osmosis, and active transport enable the entry of these substances into cells while ensuring the removal of waste products. A membrane is a thin layer of tissue that surrounds a cell or organelle. It can either be fully permeable, allowing any substance to pass through it, as in the case of the cell wall, or selectively permeable as in the case of the cell membrane. The cell membrane is composed of a double layer of phospholipids, with protein molecules embedded within the double layer. The lipids are composed of a hydrophilic head and two hydrophobic tails. The phospholipid bilayer allows the passage of small molecules, such as carbon dioxide, oxygen, urea, and fatty acids by simple diffusion. Some proteins have pores to allow large molecules such as glucose to pass through by facilitated diffusion. Particles move into and out of cells by either diffusion, osmosis, or active transport. Diffusion is the movement of particles, such as molecules, atoms, and ions, from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration until the particles are evenly distributed. An example of diffusion is when someone sprays perfume in one corner of the room and after some time, the scent spreads throughout the entire room, reaching every corner. This process occurs due to the random motion of perfume molecules as they move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration, eventually achieving equilibrium. For living cells, the cell membrane restricts the movement of particles, allowing some particles to cross with ease, but others with difficulty or not at all. The factors that affect the rate of diffusion are surface area, temperature, concentration gradient, and diffusion distance. Surface area refers to the total area of the surface of the cell. The greater the surface area of the cell, the faster the rate of diffusion. Since, as the surface area increases, more particles can spread out faster on the large surface area. Smaller particle size also results in a larger surface area, since smaller particles take up less area space, leaving more area for other molecules. The higher the temperature, the faster the rate of diffusion, as high temperatures result in molecules having more kinetic energy, allowing them to move faster. Concentration gradient refers to the difference in concentration between two areas. The greater the difference in concentration, the faster the rate of diffusion. Diffusion distance is the physical distance that molecules must travel to diffuse. The shorter the diffusion distance, the faster the rate of diffusion. Particles diffuse faster through a thin membrane than a thick membrane. Diffusion is a fundamental process in all living cells, allowing organisms to obtain many of their requirements, get rid of many of their waste products, and help them to carry out gaseous exchange. In plant cells, carbon dioxide used for photosynthesis diffuses from the air, where there is a higher concentration of carbon dioxide, into the leaves, where there is a lower concentration, through the pores on the surface of the leaves called stomata. Oxygen, which is a byproduct of photosynthesis, diffuses out of the leaf in the same way. Flowering plants also use diffusion to attract pollinators by their lovely scent, which diffuses from a high concentration in the petals into the air for pollinators to smell. In animal cells, diffusion enables the exchange of gases such as oxygen and carbon dioxide across cell membranes. For instance, diffusion occurs across the alveolar membrane of the lung, which separates the carbon dioxide-rich blood from the oxygen-rich air. Hence, oxygen diffuses across the membrane and becomes dissolved in the blood, while carbon dioxide diffuses across the membrane into the air. Oxygen also diffuses into cells from the bloodstream, while carbon dioxide diffuses out of cells into the bloodstream for removal. Additionally, diffusion facilitates the movement of molecules within cells, allowing for the transport of substances between organelles and the cytoplasm. Osmosis is an example of diffusion, where the particles being moved are water molecules. So, osmosis can be defined as the movement of water molecules from a high water potential to a low water potential through a partially permeable membrane down a water potential gradient. Water potential is the force responsible for movement of water molecules from one area to another. If there are many free water molecules in a solution because there are fewer solutes, water molecules can easily move from one area to another. The solution then has a high water potential and is said to be dilute and weak. Such a solution is described as being hypotonic. Distilled water has a high water potential. Water with a high water potential has a high force driving it to move from one area to another. When a cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, the water will move into the cell through endosmosis. If the cell gains a lot of water, the vacuole swells and the cell becomes turgid. The cell wall of plant cells expand, but prevent the cell from bursting. Animal cells expand and burst because there is no protective cell wall. When a solution has fewer free water molecules because there are more solutes, water molecules cannot easily move from one area to another. The solution then has a low water potential, and the solution is said to be concentrated or strong. Such a solution is described as being hypertonic. Sugar water or salt water has a low water potential. Water with a low water potential has a low force driving it to move from one area to another. When a cell is put in a hypertonic solution, the water will move out of the cell through exosmosis. If the cell loses too much water, the cytoplasm and vacuole shrink and become flaccid. A flaccid cell has its cell membrane tear away from the cell wall and the cell is said to be plasmolysed. Isotonic solutions refer to two solutions with the same water potential. This means that the two solutions have the same number of water molecules and the same number of solutes. It is when a cell has the same concentration of solutes inside and outside the cell. If a cell is placed in an isotonic solution, the water molecules will move out and into the cell at equal rates. You can probably recognize a dying plant. Its stem bends over and its leaves are wilted. If you catch it in time, sometimes a good watering will allow the plant to absorb water, fill its cells, and return back to its straight, upright position. Why does this happen? Plant cells are surrounded by a cell wall, giving the plant a rigid and sturdy structure. Plant cells need a certain amount of pressure to make sure that the cells stay rigid. Pressure from the fluid within the cell pushing against the cell wall is called turgor pressure. It gives rigidity to the cell and the entire plant. Turgor pressure is maintained by osmosis. When the plant loses a lot of water and turgor pressure reduces, the cell membrane is not pressed tightly against the cell wall anymore and the cell becomes plasmolysed. This causes wilting of the plant. Osmosis enables the movement of water across the cell membrane, maintaining the water balance. This is vital to the survival of all living things. For example, root hair cells on plant roots absorb water from the soil through osmosis. Without a water potential gradient, water will be lost from the root. Plants that do not receive enough water wilt because there is not enough pressure in their cells to support the structure of the plant. On the contrary, cells that fill with too much water cause brown spots on plant leaves. Many nutrients and essential molecules that animals need are dissolved in water. So, if water does not move by osmosis, living organisms won't get the essential molecules to stay alive. Metabolic waste products like urea also dissolve in water, which is transported to the kidneys to be excreted. Active transport is the movement of particles, such as ions, from a region of lower concentration to the region of higher concentration through a partially permeable membrane against a concentration gradient. Using energy from respiration. Protein molecules move particles across a membrane during active transport. Active transport enables the uptake of glucose by epithelial cells of villi and kidney tubules, as well as the uptake of mineral ions by root hairs. Mineral ions like iron, magnesium, Phosphates and nitrates are absorbed from the soil into the root hairs of plants. Their concentration are often higher inside the root hair cell than in the soil. The ions move from a low concentration in the soil to a high concentration in the root hair cell against a concentration gradient by active transport. Thanks for watching.